Niall Stanage, White House columnist for The Hill, joining us right now. New Hampshire Governor Chris Sununu, he's been mentioned as a possible 2024 GOP candidate, telling NewsNation over the weekend.
I'm not pro-Trump. I'm not anti-Trump. We're just moving on. He hasn't cleared the field. There's an argument in some states he's not even the front runner.
And Sununu also saying that he'd help pressure weaker candidates in the primary to quit to avoid a repeat of 2016. But does he have that much clout? And wouldn't he be one of those candidates? I mean, how likely is there going to be a President Sununu?
Not very, is the short answer, Adrienne. I mean, Governor Sununu has been a critic of former President Trump for quite a long time. I think what we're seeing right now is those voices becoming more assertive in the Republican Party. We saw that at that event over the weekend, people making the argument that President Trump, former President Trump, is a political liability. Governor Sununu can, to be fair, point to his own wide success in New Hampshire and the failure of a more Trumpian Senate candidate in New Hampshire. But look, how many times have we heard former President Trump is finished, this time is different, he's definitely done this time? There were a couple of polls in the last week, Adrienne, putting former President Trump up by double digits over his nearest challenger for the Republican 2024 nomination. So he's not done by a long shot.
And let's talk about former President Trump really quickly here. The DOJ has the special counsel looking into investigations surrounding him. But that FBI raid on MarALago largely seemed to galvanize many in the GOP. Do you think it'll matter much in the primary?
I don't think, to answer the specifics of that question, it will matter in the primary that a special counsel has been appointed. Now, if things were to proceed to indictments or, of course, convictions, that would be a different story. But you mentioned the FBI raid on MarALago in August, and as you rightly point out, not only did that show, so was there some sort of boost in Republican support for former President Trump in the immediate wake of that, there was also a big boost in fundraising. So I don't think the mere appointment of a special counsel is detrimental to his chances.
Is it surprising that we are seeing our first octogenarian president, President Biden, turning 80 on Sunday? I was surprised that had never happened before.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we're all living longer and life expectancy is a lot bigger than it was, you know, even, 30 years ago when President Reagan was then the oldest president. I think he left office at 77 or 78. President Biden's age is an issue. There's no point pretending it isn't. I mean, we see in polling even significant numbers of Democrats wondering about whether he should run again. You know, campaigning, never mind governing, is very physically arduous. Any of us who have done campaign trail reporting in a prolonged way know that. President Biden acts like a 40-year-old, excuse me, an 80-year-old man, looks like an 80-year-old man. He argues that you should look at his record, which is a fair point, but it's an issue and it can't not be an issue.
Yeah, 64% of voters in one poll concerned about his mental health, including 4 out of 10 Democrats. So you think he's facing internal pressure from the party to not run again?
There is internal pressure because of those polling numbers. Now, that pressure has certainly been relieved to some degree by the performance in the midterm elections, the fact that that performance was better than expected. But I think what we're seeing right now in our politics writ large, Adrienne, is this sense that the stakes are so high, Democrats are so desperate not to have a Republican come in 2024. So if they feel that President Biden isn't their best candidate, then that scrambles the picture a lot, and everything's on the table in that scenario, I think.
All right. Thank you very much, Niall. Good to see you on a Monday.
Good to see you too, Adrienne, always, any day.
Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.